Hey friends, some of you that have been following my lessons for a while may assume that I'm going to talk about SFS in this lesson. That's because one of the reasons SFS is so cool is that when you learn to use it, you can map out any scale on the fretboard without ever memorizing box shapes. But that's not what this video is about. You see, SFS is still a shape system, just smarter and more versatile than memorizing box shapes. But it's still a movable geometric system based on the geometric nature of the guitar fretboard. So it covers only one layer of what's going on the fretboard. It deals with the geometric aspect of it, just like the traditional box shapes do, just more intelligently. But what I want to introduce to you is a possibility that doesn't cross the mind of most guitar players. This is actually standard on other instruments, but not so on the guitar. It's something that classical players or jazz players may consider sometimes and apply to a degree, but definitely not the majority of guitar players. Most may not even be aware that this can be done on the guitar. So here it is, the pitch content approach. What if instead of thinking about shapes, you thought in terms of actual notes? Can you imagine playing a C major chord thinking of the notes instead of the shape? Most players would just play this and not even know that it's made of C, E, G, C, E. Or even if they do know it, they didn't form this fingering based on that knowledge. They instantly just know the shape geometrically. But what if instead you could just instantly see the notes C, E and G on the fretboard and pick and choose wherever you want to play them to form many variations of a C major chord, like a piano player does. Now I can kind of do this because I have spent many hours practicing to think like this, and I actually know the content of all scales and chords because I learned them in college. I mean, if you want to keep up with the good players in Berkeley and communicate effectively, you really need to work on this. So if you tell me to play an F sharp minor pentatonic scale, for example, I can choose to think of the notes, which are F sharp, A, B, C sharp, E, and just start playing them without thinking in terms of shapes or SFS or anything but the notes themselves. So I wasn't thinking shapes right now. I just thought F sharp, A, B, C sharp and E, and I played them wherever I could see them. But is this an effective way to look at the guitar? Believe it or not, even though at some point I was so determined to learn to play the guitar like this, and I filled my mind with all this information about key signatures and intervals and what notes are in each scale and mode and so on, I could never reach the degree of comfort that I have when I add the geometric view on the fretboard. I spent years trying to get rid of shapes altogether because I wanted to know what I'm doing in terms of theory and harmony and pitch content. But even though I put in all this time and effort, and even though this did eventually make me a better musician, at some point I realized that on the piano, where I had spent a tiny fraction of the time playing, I could still do this better. I could do it faster, I could navigate scale changes easier, I could make up new chord voicings easier. All this on an instrument that is not even my main instrument. Most of the time I play piano using the wrong fingers or even just one finger. But on the guitar I needed time to figure out fingerings and arrange everything. I couldn't really improvise at a high level with this pitch content approach, thinking about notes and theory. But that doesn't mean I wasted my time. I mean, this could be a waste of time for most players, but not for me, and I'll explain why in a bit. No, I just went at this in the wrong order. I skipped ahead, which caused my practice to be ineffective. That's why this gave me so much trouble. Because when I later had the SFS breakthrough and finally had an effective way to look at the geometric aspect of the fretboard, these two layers of understanding, the geometric and the note content, came together and made me a better player. So now, instead of trying to handle the right notes looking at just the pitch content on the fretboard, I also had SFS providing the shapes, the geometric side, and superimposed the pitch content and the degree structure on that. So as an educator looking for effective ways to teach improvisation, I realized that the pitch content approach is an advanced layer of understanding that should not be dealt with until you have a basic foundation of shapes first. That's because it's not just about knowing where the notes are. You also need to know intervals and structures and all that. I mean, not many guitar players can tell you that the major sixth in the key of E flat is C, or in B it's G sharp, or that an E major 7 chord is E, G sharp, B, D sharp. Most people don't know these things very well, but you can start playing them long before you learn any of this, just by the shapes which help you locate the right notes. For example, you can play the F sharp minor pentatonic I showed you before using SFS, SF1, SF2, SF3, and so on. Then you can just move this system everywhere. You don't need to know all the notes involved and the sharps and every detail of what you're playing. You just need the root note. In fact, some of the greatest players in history didn't have a clue about the pitch content of what they played, and they still sounded great. So where does that leave us? Well, here's how I see this as a teacher. It's a great idea to know that this aspect exists, because it will help you understand why things seem strange when you try to learn from or communicate with non-guitar players. Let's say you play in a band with a keyboard player. They should give you some extra time to figure out some things, and in the same way you should give them some time when you change keys, for example. You just move your shapes to another position, but they need to reconfigure everything and think about the right notes. So it's definitely useful to be aware of this. But do you need to practice this way and get into the more intellectual side of music? The answer for 99% of guitar players is no. Your time is better spent on other things. Chances are you're never going to need this. But if you are in that 1% of players that need that extra layer of ability, maybe you're an advanced jazz or fusion player or a composer, a teacher or whatever, then sooner or later you will need to work on those things. If you look at my lessons, I haven't posted many lessons on pitch content yet. This is on purpose. I'm focusing mainly on other subjects like SFS. And make no mistake, with SFS you can go to a very high level. In most styles, the geometric approach can take you all the way to an elite level of playing. Many guitar players in history have proven that. So I want to publish a good volume of information on other subjects first, and then at some point I am planning lessons on the pitch content approach as well, for those few who want to get into it. So there you have it, the pitch content approach. I hope this was clear. This kind of thing is a common issue for discussion among guitar players in music colleges and universities, but it's something rarely discussed in internet guitar circles, so I hope you found it interesting. Please share your thoughts in the comments, and remember, enjoy your practice and be effective.